Hi, this is Kristina Smith, Marketing and Communications Manager here at the Hayes Presidential Library and Museums, coming to you from behind the camera today. While we are closed, we wanted to bring the Hayes home to you. So today I'm going to take you on a quick tour of the first floor of the historic Hayes home. So let's go inside and check it out. Welcome to the Hayes home. This is the entryway, so if you were coming here for an in-person tour, this is the first part of the house that you would see. This house was built right before the Civil War started and was finished during the Civil War by this man right here, Sardis Burchard. He was a wealthy businessman in Fremont, and he is the reason that President Hayes has a connection to Fremont. He is President Hayes' uncle, and President Hayes' father died before he was born, so Uncle Sardis kind of became his surrogate father. He was President Hayes' mother's brother. And when he first built the house, it wasn't this big. Right now it has 31 rooms, but it didn't look like it does today. When he first built it, you wouldn't have had this grand entry hall. This was added on later. So we're going to start in the red parlor, because in the original home, this was the parlor that guests would have been welcomed into. So I want to point out that it's a nice sunny day, so we're actually getting some good light in the house, but you'll notice it is a little bit dark in here, and that's because the lighting in the home simulates gas lighting, which is what Rutherford and Lucy used. So we're trying to give you an authentic experience of what the house would have looked like. And you might notice the lights aren't actually even on today, and that's because we're having some power issues here at the home. So I want to show you some highlights from the red parlor. First of all, it's called the red parlor because President Hayes took his oath of office in the red room of the White House. He is the only president to take his oath of office in the White House, and he did that 2 days before his inauguration, because Inauguration Day fell on a Sunday, and of course because his election was one of the most contested in U.S. history. As you may know, he did not win the popular vote, but he won the electoral vote, and a special commission was actually appointed to determine who won the election, and he won that special commission's vote by 1 vote. This young lady above the fireplace is Rutherford and Lucy's only daughter. Her name is Fanny Hayes, and she is named after Rutherford's sister Fanny. The two of them were very close. Some of the other paintings on the wall, this painting here is of the White House lawn, and this is by Albert Bierstadt. He was a famous painter during Hayes' day, and he was considered kind of a painter of light. Thomas Kincaid, I guess, has that title today, but he was sort of the precursor to that. So this is one of his paintings, and then we have another one over here on the wall. And you'll still see his paintings today. There's one at Toledo Museum of Art, Cleveland Museum of Art. One hangs in the U.S. Capitol building. So his work is still very relevant today. All of the items that you're going to see on the first floor today belong to Rutherford and Lucy, with the exception of 2, and those are the pianos in the home. Next, we're going to go into Rutherford and Lucy's bedroom. This is a very important room for the Hayes family. It was considered a gathering place for the Hayeses. They had their Christmas in here with the kids. Lucy spent time in here sewing. You can see her sewing machine here. We often get a lot of questions about the sewing machine. She actually took this with her to visit Rutherford in Civil War winter camp, and she used it to mend the soldiers' uniforms. So this was a place where they would hang out with the kids. Above the fireplace here, this is Lucy's mother, Maria Cook Webb. And then across the room, we see Rutherford's mother, Sophia Burchard. Both of the Hayeses died in this bed. They had a long, loving relationship. They were married for 36 years. Lucy actually had her stroke in one of the chairs in this room, and she was moved to the bed, and she died a few days later. She was 57 years old. Rutherford died of a heart attack in this bed. One of the things I like to point out in this room is Rutherford's Civil War portrait. He rose to the rank of general in the Civil War. He did spend most of his service as colonel. And when the Civil War broke out, he was 38 years old, so he did not have to go to battle, but he enlisted almost immediately. And throughout the rest of his life, he considered his Civil War service his greatest contribution. Even as president and after being president, he preferred to be called General Hayes instead of President Hayes. Next, we're going to go into my favorite room in the house, and we call this the inner sanctum. So let's step in and check it out. This room is President Hayes' bathroom. And you can see he also used it kind of as a library, although we'll get to his library in a few minutes. But this was kind of a private area for him. You notice the slider on the bathtub. So he could sit in the bathtub and write in his diary or write letters. He was a very active diarist. He started keeping a diary at the age of 12. And as he got older, he wrote in it pretty much every day. So we have a fantastic record of things going on in his life, things going on during the time period, and what he and Lucy thought about those things. One of the things I get asked quite a bit is you'll notice the saw on the wall. Why did he have a saw? I can't tell you for sure, but there is a door to the outside in this room, and President Hayes actually kept a journal just about the Hayes home in Spiegel Grove. He called it our home. So we know that he did do his own yard work and his own pruning of the bushes and cutting of trees and things like that. So I always tell my tours that my best guess about the saw is maybe he kept that in here so he could run outside and do some quick yard work. How do we know that there was a saw in this room? Fortunately, the Hayeses were very good at documenting everything. They kept everything. And so we have this photo, which was taken by Hayes' cousin, Lucy Elliott Keeler, and we can see how the room looked. So you can see the saw on the wall there, the books, and the photographs. So we think we have a good depiction of what this room looked like when President Hayes was here. Next, we're going to step out into the hallway. You can see it's pretty dark right here. We're in the center of the house. So we're looking at the front doors now. And I always tell my tourists to look straight up. How many floors do you think we have? A lot of people say 4. It's actually 3, and that top floor that you see there is a widow's walk. It offers a 360-degree view of Spiegel Grove, and it has windows at the top. So before air conditioning, they opened all the windows, and the idea was that the hot air would rise and go out, and Lucy also kept plants there. Also in the hallway, we have one of my favorite pieces in the home. It is this chair here. It's made of elk antlers. I know it's dark in here. Hopefully you can see it pretty well. We call it the elkhorn chair, although it is made of antlers. And you see in this photo here, it was made by this gentleman who looks kind of like Professor Dumbledore. His name is Seth Kinman, and his claim to fame was he was a mountain man, and he made these chairs out of antlers and things like that for famous people. So he gave this chair to President Hayes when he was governor of Ohio, and you can see Governor Hayes sitting in the chair. Seth Kinman also made a bear chair for someone with a bear hide, so that's something a little unusual. And something I like to point out here is Mr. Kinman actually engraved his signature into one of the antlers, and you can see it here. It says Seth Kinman, Humboldt Bay. Next, we're going to go into the large parlor. So now we're getting into the additions to the home. This would have been added in 1880, this part of the house. And President Hayes was almost done being president, and he felt like he was going to need more of an area to entertain. So he added onto the house. His son Webb oversaw the addition. And we have this large parlor. We also call it the library parlor. And one of the interesting things about this room is that it's actually built a little bit taller than the other side of the house. So when you go upstairs, you actually have to go up 3 steps to get to the next wing of bedrooms. And it was to accommodate this. This life-size portrait of President Hayes was taken when he was in the White House. And this room was built was built specifically to accommodate this portrait. Rutherford and Lucy would have entertained guests in this room. Lucy played the piano, they sang songs. Some of the interesting portraits that I wanted to point out here on the wall, we have Lucy. This is her 25th wedding anniversary portrait. This portrait was taken while Rutherford and Lucy celebrated their 25th, their silver wedding anniversary in the White House. And if any of you have been to the Smithsonian Museum of American History, the dress that Lucy is wearing in this portrait is the dress on display for Lucy in the First Ladies exhibit. And she also, I don't know if you can see it, but she's wearing a hair comb, and it's made of sterling silver, and it was given to her by her son Burchard. And we have that hair comb in our collection. Here we have a portrait of Rutherford's sister Fanny. She was a very intelligent and bright woman. She and Rutherford were extremely close, and he and Lucy named their daughter after her, so their only daughter's name was Fanny. And this picture is his sister, Fanny Arabella Hayes. I also wanted to point out this portrait. This is called Babes Ascending. Rutherford and Lucy had 8 children, but only 5 of them survived to adulthood. 3 of them, all 3 boys, died before the age of 2. And in this painting, we have George and Joe, and they both died during the Civil War. And Rutherford and Lucy didn't have pictures of them. So this painting was made later on from memory. And we don't know which one is which, but it's meant to represent George and Joe. And it's very Victorian, it's very ethereal. Now you may be wondering, what about the 3rd boy who died? Well, there's not a painting of him because Rutherford and Lucy actually had a picture of him. And we have that on display here in the home as well. And his name was Manning Force. He was named after a Civil War general. Next, we're going to go into President Hayes's library. Check out all these books. Now, one thing to point out about the books is these books are all from the time period, but they didn't actually belong to President Hayes. Now, why is that? Well, President Hayes filled all of these shelves. We have photographic evidence, and we have all of his books. He had more than 10,000. But they are all in secure storage in our library because they're still used today for research. So in order to show what this room would have looked like, we found books from the era and we filled the shelves with those. So you can see what the room looked like, and we do have President Hayes's books, but they're over in the library because we still use them for research. Cool thing about this room is this is one of the darker rooms in the house, but we have this nice skylight. So it definitely assisted him in reading. Here above the fireplace, we have Lucy's college portrait. Lucy was the first lady to have a college degree, and she went to the Wesleyan Female College in Cincinnati, which no longer exists. Another thing I like to point out to my tours in the Hayes home in the library is this picture. One of the reasons that we know so much about the Hayes family is they documented things and they saved everything, which is wonderful for us. Gives a great historical record. This picture is hanging in the library, and this is James A. Garfield's inauguration. So Hayes was the 19th president. Garfield, a fellow Ohioan, was the 20th. And so you can see here, President Hayes has actually written who is who. So he's labeled right on the picture who people are. And you can see President Garfield and his wife Lucretia. And then on the right, you can see Rutherford B. Hayes and Lucy at the inauguration. Next, we're going to go into the dining room. This is another addition to the home. Lots of sunlight coming in. This room was added on around 1890. Rutherford was building this for Lucy, but sadly she died before it was finished, so she never got to enjoy it. But this room is really interesting, and other members of the Hayes family did get to enjoy it. Fanny Hayes, their only daughter, had her wedding reception. She was married in the large parlor, and then she had her wedding reception in this room. And President McKinley and his wife, First Lady Ida McKinley, attended. The McKinleys, so President McKinley was in the 23rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry with Rutherford B. Hayes, and they remained good friends for the rest of Hayes's life. One of the things I like to point out in this room is the taxidermied birds. These are pheasants. They're very well preserved, and this was a Victorian thing as well. So they're framed and preserved. So you have your pheasants. And then over here we have some ducks. I believe this is a canvas back, the one on the left, but I'm not 100% on that, and I'm not sure what the one on the right is. So this was a quick look at the first floor of the Hayes home, which looks as it did when Rutherford and Lucy lived here. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope that we can see you soon here in person.